In this tutorial, we are going to be learning about Python variables. And first, before we start learning, we are going to create a folder in which we're going to be putting our code inside. So I want you to come to your desktop and then right click and then come to new and then folder. And then I'm going to name my folder Python. And then after naming it Python, I want to open it in Visual Studio Code. So there are many ways I can do that. I can open Visual Studio Code, I can head over to File, and then Open Folder, and then I'm going to go to Desktop, and you can see the folder we created. We have Python folder here, and then I select the folder, and now we have the folder opened in Visual Studio Code. Another alternative is I can left click on the Python folder, and then right click, and then I'm going to open with code. So the same folder is going to be opened in Visual Studio Code. So you see Visual Studio Code is opened and we have our folder. So I'm going to close it again, and I can also open Git Bash, or if you want to use terminal, just use terminal. So I'm going to head over to desktop. So I'm going to say cd desktop. cd desktop. cd stands for change directory. And then now we are in the desktop directory. So we want to navigate inside this folder. So we can say cd python. If I press enter, you see right now we are in the desktop, and inside the desktop we are inside the Python folder. After we are in the Python folder, we can just say code and then period and then press enter. And you can see we've opened Visual Studio Code. So actually the last method I used is the one I always prefer. So I'm going to close the terminal and we're going to start learning about variables. So I want you to come over to the Explorer panel. You see we have this Explorer panel on this side on the left. So we have Explorer, and then we have search, and then we have source control, and then run and debug, and then extension. Just to mention, you might not have source control because to have it, you must install Git, and maybe for now you haven't learned about Git and GitHub, so don't worry about that. But I want us to open Explorer. So the shortcut to opening the Explorer is just Control B. So if you press Control B, you're going to toggle between open and close. And once we open the Explorer, I want you to come to the file icon and then create a new file. So we're going to say variables.py. And I named it the wrong way. It should have been variables. I said variables. So variables.py. Now I want us to use a function. We're going to use a print function. And for now, don't worry what functions are. Just do what I do. We are going to learn about functions when we get to the functions video. So I'm going to say print, and then I'm going to say this is my first Python program. And what we have right here, we call this a string. A string in programming is just a piece of text surrounded by quotation marks. So we have to run our program to see this text. And to do that, we are going to use the terminal. So I want you to head over to your menu, and then you can see these three dots and you can say terminal. And then you can just click it, or you can look at the shortcut we have. We have Control Shift plus backtick. Maybe on Mac it's going to be Command Shift plus backtick. So if you press Command Shift backtick, you're going to open the terminal. So for us to run our program, we're going to use Python. So we're going to say Python and then use the name of our file, variables. The name of our file is variables.py. And then if we press enter, we're going to see our text here. This is my first Python program. We can even create another statement. You can say print, and then you can say, oh my God, I love Python. And then we can run our program again. So we can type Python variables.py again, or you can just press the up arrow key on your keyboard and it's going to give us the previous command. So you see, I just pressed the up arrow key and it gave us the previous command. So if I press enter, I'm going to run my program automatically. So you see, this is my first Python program. And then, oh my God, I love Python. So one thing we can realize here is that Python is reading our code from top to bottom. So if we want this print statement to appear fast, all we have to do is just move it on top of the first print statement. And if we run our program, it's going to appear fast. So you see, oh my God, I love Python. And then this is my first Python program. Now, I want us to try some new statements. I'm going to say print, and then I'm going to say Clyde Sparks is my name. Now, I want you to use your own name. Don't use Clyde Sparks. Use your own name so that you can feel good also. So I'm going to say clear. I'm going to clear all the terminal. Just type clear and then press enter. It's going to clear the terminal for you. So we have this print statement that says Clyde Sparks is my name. If we run our program, we're going to see this text on our terminal. But the question is, if I want to use the name Clyde Sparks again, what will I do? Because the option we have right now is to create another print statement and then use the name Clyde Sparks and then say is a good programmer. So you see, we are using the same name but in different places. Of course, you can realize we have an error somewhere because the first name has a capital C and the second name has a lowercase c. So you see, we are making a mistake because we are trying to use the same name in different places, and it's possible to make mistakes, and at the same time, it's a lot of work. In this program, we only have 2 lines of code, but in a real-world application, you're going to have maybe thousands of lines of code, if not millions. So, to save ourselves, we can use variables. So a variable is just like a container. Think of it like a storage box. Just like you put things in boxes and label them, in Python you put data in variables and give them names. The label tells you what's inside without even opening the box. Variable names are the label. You choose the name for your variable, for example, age, name, or maybe favorite color, so you can remember what data it contains. And you can change what's inside your box, obviously. Just like you can take something out of your box and put something else in, you can change the value stored in your variable at any time. So let's see how we can create a variable. Since we are using a name Clyde Sparks, we're just going to create a variable name. And then we're going to put a value inside it, which is going to be a string. So we're going to say Clyde Sparks. So I'm using lowercase c. So instead of using the name Clyde Sparks manually, we can use our variable. And right now, if we do this mistake of putting our variable inside the quotation marks, it no longer becomes our variable. It is now a text inside quotation marks. So where do we put our variable? We put it outside the quotation marks. So we say name, comma, and then we use the string. So right now, if we run our program, we're going to see Clyde Sparks is my name. And if we try to run it right now, let's see what we get. Python, and then variables.py. So we see Clyde Sparks is my name, and it works exactly the same. So you see, the variable acts like the value it contains. So when Python reads this line, it's going to look at name and check what's inside name, and it's going to see Clyde Sparks. So right now Python is seeing Clyde Sparks here, but we are seeing name because Python is looking inside our variable. So we can also reuse our variable down here. We can come down here and say name, comma, and then we can clear our terminal, and then I'll just run my program again, and we see Clyde Sparks is a good programmer. So we see we are using the same variable in 2 different places, and right now we are not having any problems. And it makes our job easier because we can just come right in here and change the name of our variable, we said we can change the value anytime. So we can say Gabriel. And if we run our program again, we're going to see Gabriel is my name. Gabriel is a good programmer. So you see how easy the job is for us. Previously, we would have had to come to this statement, change the name, and then come to the next one, change the name. But right now, we can do it in one place. Even if we want it to be small g, we just change it once, and it applies to all our print statements. So, Python is case sensitive. That means if we come down here and say name, and then assign it another value, we can say Gabriel. These are two different variables. One has a capital N and another has a lowercase n. So to Python, even though they contain the same value, these are two different variables. But what if the next variable name also contains a lowercase n? Let's try and see what we're going to get. So I'm going to change the value of our second variable and give it, let's say Trevor. Let's see what we're going to get if we run our program. So if we run our program, we get Trevor is my name. Trevor is a good programmer. And you might wonder, but we also had Gabriel, and Gabriel is the first variable in our program. And that is true. So what happened here is Python read this line and it said, cool, I'm going to read line number 2. And then it came to this line. It found the same name of our variable that it had read before. Only that this time the value is different. So what happens? Python throws away this value, assigns it a new value. So when it gets to printing the name, the variable now has a value of Trevor. Gabriel has been thrown away and forgotten. So now we have Trevor is my name. Trevor is a good programmer. So that is what happened. When you use the same variable name somewhere else, when Python gets to that line, it's going to reassign the value. Whatever value you're going to give it, that's what it's going to move on with from that point onward. So if we change this n to capital N, Python is going to find a new variable and it's going to find a new value. So this variable and this one are not the same according to Python. That's what Python thinks. That's why I said Python is case sensitive. So if we create a variable name and somewhere in our program we call name with a capital N, we don't have a variable. Let's say we don't have a variable name with a capital N. This is going to give us an error because Python doesn't know what this is. It doesn't know where to find it. But if we have it, Python is going to use it. So always be careful when using your variables. Make sure you are naming them the right way and you're calling the right variables. So before we continue, there's something simple I want us to see. Every time we are trying to run our program, we have to type Python variables.py and then we run our program. But sometimes this is a little bit tough for programmers. So what we can do, Microsoft gives us an extension that can make our work easier. You remember the extensions tab? We come to extensions and then I want you to type Python. Once you type Python, you're going to see this extension. I'm going to click on it and we can see it's created by Microsoft. So if we let me close my Explorer, we see currently right now it's 2025. It has over 192 million downloads. I want you to install that extension. Once your extension is downloaded, look at the instructions Visual Studio Code is giving you. If it's telling you to restart the extension or to exit Visual Studio Code and then come back, just do that and it's going to be fine. So right now, if we look at our interface, we notice something has changed because right now we have this play button right here. So if we click on that button, we see we run our program without typing on our terminal Python variables.py to run our program. So you see right now it's a little bit easier for us just to write code and then run our program. And that reminds me one very important thing. Maybe you are not seeing code run in Visual Studio Code terminal. I really forgot to tell you this. That's because most likely you have a white dot up here. So what you can do is to save your project. That white dot is telling you that this project has not been saved, or the changes you've made have not been saved. So anytime you make a change, be sure to press Ctrl S to save a program, or you can go to File and then Save. So if we come to File, you can see we have this shortcut Ctrl S. For me, I don't get that dot because I have enabled the autosave feature. So also I would prefer for you to enable that autosave feature so that it can save you a lot of headache. Sometimes you can write good code and then you just forget to save, and you run your program, try running it again, nothing happens, only to realize the next day you had not saved the changes you made to your program. So once you enable autosave and run your program, everything is going to work just fine. Now, we've just worked with one data type, string, in our program, but variables can carry any type of value. It's not just limited to strings alone. So let's check a few data types that we have. And first we have string. I told you anything that has been surrounded by quotation marks, we call that a string in programming. And then next we're going to look at integers. So we can have an integer variable. Just a minute, I think I unchecked my autosave feature, so I'm going to enable it again. So we're going to say age equal 25. That's my current age. Don't be surprised why is he saying age equals 25. And if we come down here and print age, we can see we have 25. So we see we have a variable that carries a value 25 inside it, and we can also use it in a sentence. So I can create a string and say my current age is, and then close the string, and then add a comma, and then add age. So you see my current age is 25. So Gabriel is my name, and then you have Trevor is a good programmer, and then my current age is 25. Nice. So we call this an integer. Whole numbers without decimal points, this can be positive, negative, or zero. We call them integers in programming. So we use them when counting items, maybe indexing sequences, and also mathematical operations. Mostly we use whole numbers in mathematical operations. So we can have different kinds of variables. Let me create another one. I can say items, and then I'm going to say underscore, and then count, and then I'm going to say equal 10, and then I could say, let's say temperature. Then I'm going to say negative 25, not 25, negative 5. Someone must be freezing somewhere. And then we also have float data types. So I'm going to say, let's say price equal 19. It should be 19.99. Mostly we use this for fractional values. Let's say in scientific calculations, financial calculations, and also any measurement requiring precision. So we want to be precise. We're going to use floats instead of integers, because an integer is going to ignore the 0.99. So to be precise, we are going to use a float. So let's create a few more variables. I can say pi. This is the most used example in programming. So I'm going to say 1, 4, then 1, 5, and then 9. And then we can create another one also. Let's say temperature. Again. And then we can say 98.6. So we have this variable temperature here, which equals to -5. And also we have this temperature variable here, which is now a float, which has 98.6. I want you to try running this program and try printing out these two variables and see which one is going to be printed. If all print, tell us down below in the comment section. If one prints out, just tell us again in the comment section down below. And then we also have Boolean variables. So Boolean variables just represent truth values, let's say true or false, and mostly we use them for logical operations. So when to use them is when, let's say, with conditional statements and logical operations and comparisons. So let me show you something here. I'm going to say is underscore active, and I'm going to say true. So you see, we have to make sure it makes sense. We don't just say active or a or something like that. We say is active, and now it makes sense if we say true. Another example, we can say has underscore permission. I can say false, and then I can say is, so is underscore greater equal 10, and then I'm going to use the greater than sign and say 5. I want you again to print is greater and use this variable and see what's going to happen, because we're not giving it maybe either true or false, we're giving it an expression. So I want you to run the program and see what will happen. And lastly, we can say, let's say is underscore subscribe. I know what I'm doing here. I'm sure you've seen what I'm trying to do here. So I could say false, and that is very, very bad. You need to be subscribed. You see, a variable can carry any type of value, be it an integer, be it a string, be it a float, and we have many other types. We have, let's say, a tuple, a dictionary, a set, a list, but we're going to look at those in later videos. For now, we're going to stick with the basics. Let's talk about variable naming conventions. First, we're going to look at the valid characters. You can't just name your variable anyhowly. And as you can see, I've been trying to use descriptive names. So variable names can contain letters, numbers, and underscores, but cannot start with a number. If you start with a number, that's a bad variable name. Another thing I say, Python is case sensitive, so these are all different variables. You can see we have Alice, we have name, and we have name again. All these are names variables, but they're all different variables. So we have name with lowercase, name with an uppercase n, and then name in uppercase. So while technically valid, using case to differentiate variables is confusing and should be avoided. So avoid using different cases to differentiate variable. Just use a different variable name. Don't say name and name, and then expect to not run into problems later. And then I need you to use snake case naming convention. So for variables and functions, use lowercase with words separated by underscores. We call that snake case naming convention. So you see, every time I have more than one word, I use an underscore to separate the words. I don't just use anything or maybe put space inside. In fact, if we put some space here, you can see we're going to get an error. Now, is a reserved keyword. We're going to look at them later. And then subscribe. So this is now a variable and it's different from this one. So Python is wondering, what's this? Because it's not understanding what you're doing. So if we want to have clean variable names, we use an underscore. We use an underscore to separate words. Again, I'm going to say avoid reserved keywords. Don't use Python keywords as variable names. And we can see we have a list. of reserved keywords I've created. So we have false, none, true, and, as, assert, async, await, break, class, continue, and all the rest. So you can see that example I've given you there. We can see my underscore class, which is good example. And we also have a different one, which says class equal math. Class is a reserved keyword. Next, we have use descriptive names. Again, I'm repeating. Variable names should be descriptive but concise. Avoid overly short or cryptic names. Don't say something like E, A, N, Q. I mean, if someone is trying to read your code, they won't understand what you're doing. And if maybe you've gone for a job interview, you're going to have problems. So use descriptive names. And then we can say special naming conventions. Python has special conventions for different types of identifiers. And I'm going to give you this simple example you can look at, but we're not going to talk about them for now. That's not important for us to learn right now. That's it for variables tutorial. I'm going to see you in the next tutorial.